She'll wait another couple of minutes for people to come online, see if we can get a quorum. If not, we will start with the roll call after 2 minutes.
Good morning, everybody. This is Rich Kaler. Can you hear me?
Yeah. We'll start in just about a minute.
Okay, sounds good.
It's 10:02. This is the meeting of the Nevada Hazard Mitigation Working Group. I will have Ms. Borst call to order.
Lauren Borst for the record. Bill Elliott.
Present.
Andrew Trelease.
I'm here.
Stephen Acroft.
Present.
Eric Antle.
Present.
Salome Barton.
Present.
DT Allen. Sherry A. Davis. Rich Kaler.
Present.
John Johnson. Sierra Sampson. Sarah Fickner.
Present.
Star Albert. Janelle Woodward.
Present.
Samantha Laddick.
Here.
You are one shy of quorum.
No, we have some. Oh, no, we don't. Well, Phil doesn't.
Well, Samantha, we are one shy. Shall we wait another couple of minutes, or do we have to abandon this meeting?
Okay, so just to make sure we're all on the same page, how many are you seeing for quorum? I'm seeing 6 for quorum because we have a vacant position. And Bill Elliott obviously doesn't count, but I'm seeing 6 members present. Am I missing someone?
For the record. No, you're correct, Sam.
So we're good.
So I think we have quorum.
We do.
So I'm showing 11 total, so that would be 6 for quorum. It may just have been confused because of the vacant position, but we don't.
You're correct.
Oh, okay, good. Okay, so hopefully we can move.
Okay.
You're quorum.
So we have a quorum. We have been called to order. We'll go to agenda item number 2, public comment. No action may be taken upon matters raised under this item of the agenda until the matter itself has been specifically included on the agenda as an item upon which action may be taken. Public comments may be limited to 3 minutes per person at the discretion of the chair. Comments will not be restricted based on viewpoints. To provide testimony, please, during the period of public comment via telephone, please call at any time after 9:30 a.m. on the day of the meeting by dialing 669-219-2599. Prompted to provide the meeting ID, please enter 202-331-8963 and then press pound. When prompted for the participant ID, please press pound. When asked to provide public comment, please press *6 to unmute your phone and *6 again when your comments are complete. Please be advised that the YouTube stream will be between 60 and 90 seconds behind the live meeting. If you would like to present a public comment, please call in using the above number to hear the meeting live. Is there any comment here in Carson City? Hearing none. Any comments online?
Lauren Borst for the record, seeing none.
Hearing none. Are there any comments on the phone?
No, sir.
Okay, we'll close out agenda item number 2, and we'll go to agenda item number 3, approval of the minutes. We have any discussion on the minutes?
Andrew Trelease, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
The motion has been,
Salome
there's,
Barton, second.
who was that again?
Salome Barton, second.
So the motion has been moved and seconded to approve the minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any dissensions? Okay. We'll close out item number 3 and go to item number 4, volcano report, study report out by Dr. DiPolo.
All right, thank you. Well, a year or two ago, I was funded to do a review of Nevada's volcanic hazard. It's always been low in our mitigation plans, yet we do have a number of volcanoes in the state. So I wanted to take a more critical look at that. And so we have this grant, and it involved reviewing the volcanic hazard of the state. And we also did some dating on some of the younger eruptions in the state too, which are the most critical from a hazard point of view. So how do I advance this?
Just an extension.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll do a quick introduction to Nevada Quaternary volcanoes, talk about some volcanic terms. We'll then talk about the volcanic fields in Nevada, timeline of Nevada eruptions, volcanic hazards and risks, and out-of-state volcanic hazards, and then my recommendations to Nevada. Slide, great. So Nevada has over 165 quaternary volcanoes and 7 volcanic fields. It's actually pretty impressed with the number. There are a number of different eruption types, but monogenetic basaltic eruptions dominate over the last million years, and I'll mention what monogenetic means here in a minute. The most recent eruption is about 6,000 to 5,000 years ago. It was a phreatomagmatic eruption near Fallon, the Soda Lake volcano. And the upshot of the study is that the Lahontan Valley volcanic field has a moderately high risk of an eruption. The Lunar Crater volcanic field has a low to moderate risk. 4 fields are active but have low risk, and 2 fields are inactive. So a few volcanic terms. Volcano has a few different definitions. The one I'll use is a vent that erupts magma on a surface. But it also refers to landforms such as a cinder cone or something like that, and the process of volcanism as well. Volcanic rocks, we talk about ash, that's less than 2 millimeters. We use the term lapilli if it's between 2 and 64 millimeters. And then if it's bigger than 64 millimeters, they're called bombs if they were fluid when they were ejected, and blocks if they were solid. And collectively, we call these tephra pyroclastic material or ejecta. The common landform here in Nevada are volcanic cones, and those are named after what they're made of. So if it's a cinder cone or a spatter cone or a scoria cone, those are just different sizes of material. And again, whether they were solid when they hit the ground or not. We have lava flows. They come in a sort of two general types, an flow, which is a little cooler, flows a little slower. You got a better shot at stopping it. And the hotter flows are Pahoehoe flows. Those have ropey surfaces. They're very fluid and very fast moving. For eruption types, we have Hawaiian types of eruptions, such as they have in Hawaii. You've probably seen on the news. A slightly stronger eruption than that is a Strombolian eruption. It has more gases coming out, more of an ash cloud and things like that. We haven't had them lately, but we can have Vesuvian eruptions, which are after Mount Vesuvius in Europe. It puts out a pretty good column of ash, and we'll see a picture of one of these when I talk about the Lassen eruption. We have phreatomagmatic eruptions, which are when magma hits the groundwater, flashes to steam, and explodes. That's what happened most recently near Fallon. And then we even have one Surtsian eruption, which is an eruption through water. And it turns out we had an eruption come through Lake Lahontan, Pleistocene Lake Lahontan in Lahontan Valley. That's actually my favorite eruption. Phreatic and hydrovolcanic features, because the most recent eruptions have been these. If we have a big crater blown out of the ground, it's called a maar. It can be surrounded by a tephra ring, and if it starts to build up, it can be called a tephra cone. Monogenetic volcano, it turns out almost all Nevada volcanoes are monogenetic. That means they only erupt in a single eruptive cycle. So say in contrast to something like Mount Shasta in California, which has eruptions from time to time and has a magma chamber in the middle crust that's feeding those eruptions, Nevada eruptions tend to be a one-shot deal. The magma comes up, it doesn't cool in the crust really at all, and just erupts, and then it's over. So that makes it hard to judge activity, at least from an individual volcano point of view. From a fault, we might look at how active a fault is, how often it's having earthquakes, but we can't do that with an individual volcano. So that forced me to view the fields, the volcanic fields themselves, for judging activity. Now, eruptions at nighttime are a lot of fun. Here's some pictures of from Iceland in 2024. The upper part shows some fountains, probably producing cinders and things like that that are actually solid by the time they hit the ground. Just some bubbling over there on the upper right. On the lower parts are some fissure eruptions, and so you can see the crack or fissure that has magma coming out of it and the lava that's pouring out of that. On the one on the lower right is actually kind of interesting because they're echelon stepping fissures, so they have a bit of a structural flavor to them. Next slide, we'll see there, if you keep this up for a while, you get to build landforms, or you begin to build landforms such as the spatter cone on the upper left there with the lava flow coming out. Upper right, you see a nice cinder cone being formed there, cinders blasting out. It's hard to, phreatomagmatic explosions, you don't really want to take a picture on. But there is a picture of an eruption through a lake there on the lower left, and that is showing aspects of the phreatic explosion, the upward ejecta going out, and importantly, the horizontal things coming out the sides, the surge deposits, which kind of characterize these eruptions. And then they're in the middle is just some scientists. They're taking a break. They're playing spatter ball. You take a metal bat, get 10 swings to see how much spatter you can hit. No, just joking. Seven quaternary volcanic fields in Nevada. So on the top there is Buffalo Valley Volcanic Field. In Churchill County is the Lahontan Valley Volcanic Field. Just north of us at this position is the Western Nevada Volcanic Field. Down to the south there, the Aurora Volcanic Field near Mono Lake. Very active field, the Lunar Crater Volcanic Field in sort of the middle upper part of Nye County there. Scattering of volcanoes that I collectively called the Clayton Columbus Volcanic Field, and then down by Yucca Mountain, the Southwest Nevada Volcanic Field. So I'm going to use a term here, call it 8, and it's the average inter-eruption time. And this is a fictitious number, but it gives us an idea on how active a field is while it's erupting. And so the 8 is simply taking the duration of volcanic activity, taking that time and dividing it by the number of eruptions minus 1. You have to subtract 1 from the number of eruptions because you're considering the periods of eruptions within that. And so I've developed these numbers for all the volcanic fields so we can just have a feeling for how often they're having eruptions. And eruptions do cluster in time quite a bit. So again, it is sort of just a metric we can use. So the northernmost volcanic field is the Buffalo Valley Volcanic Field, just south of Battle Mountain in westernmost Pershing County. There's 18 volcanoes. They're in 8 groups over a distance of about 12.5 kilometers. The key paper here is Cousins et al. 2013. And this field was active between 2 million years ago and 1.1 million years ago. It had sort of 4 episodes based on the dating. And the 8 there is 113,000 years. So a couple things. It's a very old field. It hasn't had an eruption since 1.1 million years. So we're going to consider this volcanic field inactive. It also, well, it also has episodes within it. So I took the dates, I correlated the morphology of the different volcanoes, and you can kind of come up with a pattern that the early eruptions around 2 million are the 2 on the lower left there. And then the northern part went about 300,000 years later, thereabouts. Then the middle had quite a bit of activity, and then it went back to the northern end. So it's interesting to watch these play out. It's also interesting to consider this magma was formed 40, 60 kilometers down by partially melting some mantle down there, 3 to 5% melt, and made it all the way up through the entire lithosphere and erupted. This just shows, taking those little volcanoes off, this shows some of the cones that are related to the Buffalo Valley Volcanic Field. They're remarkably well preserved for being 1.1 million years old. They also have a common feature of Nevada volcanoes, which is one side is breached or a corner has a part of the cone is missing. And that is where the lava flow usually comes out of the cone. Either the tephra has been thrown on the lava as it's coming out, or the lava flow came later in the cone's history and it rafted pieces of the cone away, and we could see both of those taking place. I mentioned that this field ended about 1.1 million years ago, and that ends up being an interesting number for volcanism in Nevada. I'll just mention that. So the next field, Western Nevada Volcanic Field, it's more or less between Reno and Carson City. There's 13 isolated volcanoes. Were active between 2.55 and 1.2 million years ago. 2 basic episodes of activity. The older one, 2.5 million years ago, we had an eruption out of Steamboat and a couple eruptions on the Carson Range here. And then about 1.5 to 1.2 million years, all the other volcanoes erupted in kind of a episode there. And it turns out that when you look at that latter episode, its age was 38,000 years. So significantly, an order of magnitude shorter than almost than the Buffalo Canyon volcanic field. So when this field was active, it was pretty active. Nevertheless, hasn't had an eruption since 1.2 million years. So we're going to consider this field fortunately inactive. This would have been the highest risk field we would have had if it was active. Down by Mono Lake, the Aurora volcanic field, 10 to 15 volcanoes in Quaternary, and this field has been active all through the Quaternary. Quaternary began 2.6 million years ago, and this field has been erupting from time to time, all the way up to about 40,000 to 1.10 or 110,000 years, years ago. 3 basic episodes in here. John et al. Is 2015's the critical paper. There are a number of volcanoes, but they have been spread out through this whole history. So the 8 is 320,000 years, pretty long time period between eruptions. Nevertheless, there is a late Pleistocene eruption in this field. It's 40,000 to 110,000 for the youngest volcano. So it is considered active. And just showing a couple of those volcanoes, Aurora Crater Volcano there. It's one of the largest Quaternary volcanoes in Nevada, about 200 meters high and 4 kilometers wide. And it erupted sometime between 470,000 years ago and 260,000 years ago. Still pretty darn well preserved. The youngest volcano in that field is the Mud Springs volcano. It erupted between 110 and 40,000 years ago. And this volcano is interesting in that it's all lava flow. There's a very, very small cone where the volcanic symbol is. But most of this was a lava flow that went down, filled up the river channel. And then once it filled the channel, you can see it's starting to push out to the sides a little bit there. 7-kilometer long lava flow. But it must have been pretty hot and a pretty high rate of activity to do that. Everything in volcanism is the rate of magma coming out, whether you have a lava flow or not, what kind of explosiveness you have. It all comes back to that parameter. It's kind of interesting. Here's the most active field in Lake Quaternary in the state, the Lunar Crater Volcanic Field. Over 103 volcanoes in this field. It's about 35 kilometers long there. Valentine et al. 2017 is the critical paper. And if you're going to read one paper on Nevada volcanism, that's the one to read there, Valentine 2017. There's 2 big episodes in this field. And it was active from 1.1 million years. So now instead of ending at 1.1, we're going to start at 1.1 and then go to 35,000 years ago was the most recent eruption there. So this is a very active field, an 8 of 13,000 years, the lowest one we've got, more or less. And you can see all those volcanoes. Here's a few of them. The youngest eruption is the Markath volcano. 35,000 years ago. It started, you're looking head on at what was a fissure eruption, and you can see the cone there. If you look to the right of the cone, you can actually see what looks like another cone, but it's actually a fissure and a rampart. So this was a big fissure like you saw in the nighttime photos. It then focused in on the vent, which is about 150 meters high, and gradually lava started coming out. It filled the portion in front of the vent there. You can see the breached area of the vent. And then it gradually overwhelmed that and came down and is flowing out on the valley floor. In the middle is Easy Chair Volcano. That volcano started as a 2.5 kilometer long fissure eruption and then built 2 cones in the middle. And then switched over to a phreatomagmatic eruption. So just when you think you can get up close to these things and they're pretty benign and get your bulldozers guiding lava flows around, you got to watch out for a phreatomagmatic explosion of all things. And then there was a little bit more scoria erupted after that. In the lower part there was Lunar Crater. That's a phreatomagmatic explosion as well. And a lot of the astronauts actually practice there in the Apollo missions. They go around and drive their buggies in that area and stuff. Next is A couple cartoons here, schematic figures. On the right is a figure from Valentine et al. 2017. And it just shows how the process through the crust there. So down below in that lower blob is where the partial melting is occurring. It's in the asthenospheric mantle. Above that, at 60 kilometers, and that's is the lithosphere is above that. That's the upper crustal part of Earth. 60 kilometers is a very thin lithosphere, actually. It's usually about 100 kilometers thick. And so that's one of the reasons that heat can get up really close to the surface of the Earth. You see some of and then the red blobs and the conduits, the red lines are conduits. And they show that the magma can come up and it can pool under the crust, underplate the crust. But then in some cases, it crosses that boundary and makes its way to the surface. The upper part is controlled by faults, usually just the upper 3 kilometers. And then in this case, the scientists believe that that gray area is a process zone below the faults that allows the magma to more easily get across that crustal boundary. Another thing I'll note is on the left there is a fault map, and the two biggest range bounding faults on either side of the lunar crater volcanic field, that's that Hatchard sign, they both dip into towards the lunar crater volcanic field in a rift kind of fashion. This is the same situation for Buffalo Valley as well. And I've drawn those, assuming a 50-degree dip and a linear fault trace, I've drawn those traces in on the cartoon on the right, just to show they're intersecting near the base of the crust and could be involved in this process as well. And it also turns out the most active parts of these faults are opposite where the lunar crater volcanic field is. So they're just part of the package. Probably began 20 million years ago, actually, but they're part of this extensional package that is that the volcanic field is part of this one. Okay. Southwest volcanic field, Southwest Nevada, the one near Yucca Mountain. 8 volcanoes. They're coming off of what used to be in the middle upper part there, or the upper right part. You can see kind of almost a round feature. That's a caldera like Yellowstone used to be. And so they're kind of a waning part of this volcanic field in a sense. The 3 episodes, Crater Flat there, the 5 volcanoes that are in a row, is about 1 million years ago. About 320,000 years ago, the 2 volcanoes north of Beatty erupted, and then the most recent event is 77,000 years ago, the Lathrop Wells cone. So a pretty long 170,000 year 8 on this. Nevertheless, it does have a late Pleistocene volcano, and so we'll consider the field active. And then Clayton Columbus volcanic field, just a few scattered volcanoes around Columbus Marsh, northern Fish Lake Valley, and then near Clayton, we're near Silver Peak. So 4 isolated events. The 3 that are on the left side there, upper left, are all very old. They're between 1 and 2 million years old. They have inverted topography under their flows and things like that. And then the volcano in the middle there is the Clayton Valley volcano. That's about 390,000 years old. Again, a breach side and a lava flow coming out. This is pushing it. The 8 is really long, over 500,000 years. It's pushing it, but it's still potentially active because that still is a late Pleistocene event. So very low hazard, but nevertheless, it's still made a potentially active category. Okay, now the big one, the one we have to worry about, Lahontan Valley volcanic field. So there's 3 main volcanoes in Lahontan Valley. They've been erupting all through Quaternary, and the 3 volcanoes are Rattlesnake Hill volcano near Fallon, down in the lower right there, Upsal Hogback volcano in the upper part of the figure there, and then the Soda Lake volcano in the lower left there. Now this in red is an active field. It's down to about 5,000 years for the youngest event. And there's 2 basic episodes of activity in this field. So we'll get the old episode out of the way first, and that's the Rattlesnake Hill volcano. Next slide. Thank you. And so this is Rattlesnake Hill. Only the very top of this is visible. But it's a big volcanic complex. It actually goes from 2.5 million years down to the recent cone by Fallon there is 900,000 years. Maurer and Welsh, USGS hydrologists, are the primary reference on this. They put a lot of information together to get this underwater basaltic, or excuse me, underground basaltic volcanic field understood. It's a major aquifer for Fallon and the Naval Air Base, so everybody gets their water out of it. It does look like, and it's buried under as much as 180 meters of sediment from the Lake Lahontan and various things that have occurred, the alien sediments and things in Lahontan Valley. So most of this is buried. It does look like there's a second volcano there in a cone feature. And there's kind of a question, is this a polygenetic volcano that erupted from, for 1.5 million years, or are there actually a few volcanoes there and they're still monogenetic, they just erupted at different times? About 4 volcanoes would satisfy the dates as being monogenetic. Okay, and this is considered extinct because it's been over 900,000 years since any activity occurred. Next is the Upsal-Hogback volcano in the lower central part. You can see my admission. I love this volcano. That's an inclusion in what Upsal-Hogback itself. This volcano erupted between 20 and 14,000 years ago, has 6 craters, about 4 kilometers long, and it erupted through Lake Lahontan. These are Surtsian eruptions, broad hydrovolcanic craters, and we're working on the possibility that there's 2 earlier eruptions out of this volcano or near it. So you can, Anderson 2014 did the critical master's thesis on this, and she recognized a mineral called palagonite. Now, palagonite is sort of a yellowish mineral. It's a hydrothermal alteration of basaltic glass. And it occurs above the water line. And so I was able to use that. The water line's about 1242 meters. And so I was able to draw out what was the part of the volcano that was above the water, and that's Upsal Island there in red. And that got about 20 meters high. It was erupting through 45 meters of water. A lot of basaltic ejecta. This was a big eruption. And then post-eruption, it was submerged by the lake. And if Lake Lahontan hadn't been here, this would have been a very large, probably wouldn't have hit the fissure stage. It probably would have had a series of phreatomagmatic eruptions. And then it would have built 2 very large cones if the water wasn't here. But the water kind of keeps most of the volcano built up to the water level, and then between the wave action and things like that, it just made it get broader, not higher. So here's a picture of the eruption. You're looking to the north. That's the south crater erupting there, Upsal Island in the background. And the north crater is cooling its jets right now. It's just putting out some steam. But this is what it could have looked like. And these water eruptions are amazing. There's a lot of dynamics there because the basalt is coming up through a slurry of all kinds of stuff that's falling back in the crater, and water and steam, and the sides are falling back in the crater. All these features on this particular cartoon that represents a hydrovolcanic eruption, all these features are visible at Upsal volcano. It's really neat. And I'm going to try to lead a field trip out there next fall if you want to come out and see some of this. You can't pick on the heart though. So in the upper right part there is palagonite, that yellowish material that tells us that we're above the water level. Probably if you get below the water level, there's still some palagonite, but the thermal part's knocked out of the hydrothermal alteration. So on the upper left there's a couple arrows pointing out that palagonite, less palagonite line there. And you can see it's pretty clear. Above that is yellowish and below that is blackish. In the lower left is reconstruction of the Upsal Hogback. A lot of this volcano, because it was submerged later by the lake, have been eroded away. And I drew the water line on there just so you could kind of see what that was like. And on the lower left is part of the crater that's collapsed back into the vent, and then it started throwing tephra on that collapsed wall. Next. And part of this project has been to date the youngest eruption. So we came on to Dr. Rodriguez was already working with a scientist from UNR to date the Soda Lake eruption. And I discovered this tephra outcrop here from Upsal Hogback, water laying tephra as we expect. And there's Dr. Rodriguez. She's collecting a sample in the lower left. And then she's measuring the radiation for optical luminescence dating there in the lower right. Stuff's great for your garden, by the way. So here's I covered this out. Okay. So here's a study by Morrison, and he looked at the south side of Carson Sink and he drew the stratigraphy that he saw on the south side of Carson Sink. This would be east of Upsal Hogback volcano. And Jonathan Davis, in his dissertation, 1997, identified the upper basaltic sand that Morrison mapped as being from that recent Upsal Hogback eruption. So he used the index of refraction of the glass to correlate the two. And then the Wono ash under that is a whitish ash. I'm kind of guessing it's from the Cascades, but I don't know. That's been dated at 27,000. And then below that, we actually have a possible older eruption of another basaltic sand down below. So there is a possibility of an earlier eruption, younger than the most recent eruptions out of this or some other volcano. Remember, I said that there was that most of Rattlesnake Hill is buried, so it's possible that there are other buried volcanoes in Lahontan Valley. This is Soda Lake volcano. Shows you the groundwater level there. And it's a series of craters to make up the big guy and a single crater down below. These are phreatomagmatic eruptions, and these are Mars. They're not positive features on Earth. They're actually excavated into the surface of the Earth. The youngest eruption has been dated by Rodriguez and Rupert at 5,000 to 6,000 years. And we knew it was in this ballpark because there are no shorelines on what are the tuff ring there on the upper right part of that volcano. You can see it, the tuff ring, and there's no shorelines in that. I began working on this and noted some earlier mentions of eruptions and found a paleo tuff ring I'll show you. And then Dr. Rodriguez and I went out and we dated that. And the date is between 13.6 and 11.6 thousand years. So this is a picture showing the south side of Soda Lake there. The mid-Holocene tuff ring without shorelines is on the upper part. And then the paleo tuff ring is below that. You can see some horizontal lines on that. Those are the shorelines. You can see the alternate interpretation of this is that it's a fault-bounded block in a perfect position next to a volcano or something. That's what I had up till this study. However, it's curvilinear towards the volcano there, and I did a soil pit in the middle of that and found basaltic lapilli and coarse basaltic ash. And so we know that this is prior to the most recent eruption, and we're finding erupted products in there. So this is a paleo eruption of that volcano, and it turns out that the lake beds are the younger driest lake, and it came up. The highest shoreline on that's the most prominent, and that's actually as high as the lake theoretically got. There was a few meters of this hill sticking out, maybe. At any rate, that's the evidence for that, and these are the evidence for those earlier eruptions. Morrison noted some water well hole logs, and you can see there the upper part, just as an example, shows volcanic ash from the recent eruption. There's 5.8 meters of soft clay below that. And then coarse cinders at 20 centimeters thick worth of coarse cinders. This is about 600 feet north of Soda Lake. So that's that earlier eruption, and it's overlain by lacustrine type deposits, which would be that younger Dryas Lake. And then Morrison, Russell, 1885 looked at Soda Lake, and he was able to go a lot deeper because it was before the Newlands project. And he noted deposits which were also probably from that earlier eruption. So these are the youngest eruptions in the Lahontan Valley volcanic field, and by and large in Nevada. The exception is the very top of this. So let's go from the bottom. There's the most recent event out of Soda Lake, 6,000 to 5,000 years ago. The second penultimate event, or second event back, is 13.6 thousand years ago to 11.6 thousand years ago. And then we have Upsal-Hogback, and I think Upsal-Hogback has actually gone through the high stand. So I trimmed that back from 20,000 to 15.5 thousand. There's enough erosion on there that I would posit that, if you will. And then we have that earlier basaltic sand noted by Morrison. That's somewhere between 30,000 and 27,000 years ago. We don't know if that came from Upsal-Hogback, but we do know an eruption occurred in Lahontan Valley at that time. And then something I'm working on right now is that Morrison also said there was an eruption right before the Churchill soil, which is a soil that formed right before the lakes came into, the most recent lakes came into Lahontan Valley. It'd be between 45 and 35,000 years. And preliminary results do indicate a small percentage of distinct reworked basaltic ash right under the Churchill soil. That was just one shovel dig. So we'll go on back. Let's go back to that slide for a minute, please. On the right-hand side, I have time between eruptions and then the midpoint. And what I'm just showing as I cross the younger and older and different possibilities of the time between eruptions. The point I just want to make out of this is that when you look at those lower two times between eruptions, 1.5 to 8.4 thousand years, or 5.6 to 8.6 thousand years, those are on the same order of magnitude as the most recent eruption, 6,000 to 5,000 years. So so this is the highest hazard volcanic field we have. And it's not unreasonable to think that another eruption could occur. It's not unreasonable to think that eruption could be sooner or than later. We would anticipate we have lots of preliminary activities such as earthquakes and uplift of the ground. In the case of Upsal, there's actually a permanent GPS station on it, so we would know right away. But this is the big change this study brings to the volcanic hazard in Nevada. We thought it was low everywhere. For consequences, next slide. Well, there's a lot. The consequences are high in Lahontan Valley. We've got a population just under 10,000 people that may have to be temporarily relocated. The Paiute-Shoshone Indian colony, we got 2 airports there. If an eruption's going to occur, all the planes got to get out. 2 highways, a railroad line, military facilities, and then the Coast Guard's going to have to get its Coast Guard cutter out of Soda Lake.
I've been to that.
So this just shows the 15 most recent dated eruptions in Nevada. There are likely more than this that are in the lunar crater field that haven't been dated, but it shows the 2 recent eruptions in Soda Lake, Upsal-Hogback, and then Markath. We go to the lunar crater field, Mud Spring, that's the Aurora volcanic field, Gibble Springs back to lunar crater, and so forth. All the volcanic fields are kind of in here except the 2 inactive ones. Okay, and then a timeline, next slide, just plotting the dates we have in the last 2 million years, there's 55 dates. About a third of the Quaternary volcanoes have been dated, a lot by Chris Henry of the Nevada Bureau of Mines and Geology. And I mentioned that 1.1 million years, and there is some sort of change that occurs in Nevada in volcanism at 1.1 million years. There's a couple fields that turned off. Both of the inactive fields turned off at that time. Excuse me. And lunar crater came on with a vengeance at that time. So it's just kind of an interesting date. I don't know what that date is. I've got a lot of, well, I'll have to ask AI. Anyway, I've got a lot. I've been asking around to see if the plates change motion or something happened that would cause that change. Anyway, so just recapping, Lahontan Valley volcanic field has a moderately high risk of an eruption. Lunar crater volcanic field, a low to moderate risk. Most of that's transportation if it did go, but it would cut off the main east-west route through the center of the state. So you'd all of a sudden have to go through Las Vegas or go through Highway 50 to get to the other side of the state from the lower part. Southwest volcanic field, low risk. Aurora volcanic field, low risk. And Clayton Valley, low risk. And what do we got left? Oh, out-of-state volcanoes. So we are surrounded. So here's 1776 volcanoes kind of around us. Every state has them. But the ones we really worry about are Eastern California. And we worry about those for two reasons. One, they're a lot more active. So we've had 11 eruptions, for example, out of the Mono Craters area near Long Valley since the most recent eruption in Nevada. Additionally, that figure sort of in the central lower part by Miller, 1989, just shows the potential for ash across Nevada, but it also importantly shows the westerly winds we have that would potentially carry ash into the state and into our airspace. So I want to show one eruption, and this is the last and peak eruption of May 22nd, 1915. So this was a Vesuvian eruption, late afternoon. The picture on the upper left there shows the eruption probably about 20 to 30 minutes into the eruption. It's you can see the relief of the Sierras is dwarfed there by that 7-mile high ash cloud, and it's spreading out about 5 miles there as well. And then the lower right picture shows probably an hour or two into the eruption. So the sun angle now is coming in horizontally on that cloud. You can see the upper part of the cloud just kind of had a burst of eruption, and now the column is just continuing. But importantly, if you look behind that ash cloud, you see ash falling in Nevada. And so I went to the newspapers, and the next slide will show us. I found where there were reports of ash, and you know, in this day and age, there weren't a lot of vehicles in 1915. But today you can imagine what that would do with I-80 running through there. So it jumped over Susanville and then started falling on the other side, Hurlong and those areas. Imlay, they actually measured the ash. That's 5 centimeters of ash, 2 inches of ash. And it went as far as Elko, about 500 kilometers. The volcano itself was 130 kilometers west of the state line. I looked at the Utah papers. There's no mention of ash falling there. All the discussion is what's happening in Nevada. And the one thing, excuse me, there were trains all over the place. That was the big deal. They slowed down, but nobody stopped because they were driving through an ash cloud. But they were having a tough time seeing, and I imagine there was quite a bit of damage there. So recommendations to Nevada. 5 of the 7 Quaternary volcanic fields can be considered active or potentially active. The Lahontan Valley volcanic field has a moderate to high risk of an eruption, and lunar crater a low to moderate risk. Now, the good news here is that these are spatially restricted. So we don't have to consider the whole state. We do have to consider the area that could be affected downwind and things like that. But it's not like the whole state has this level of volcanic activity. So that's some good news. And the real good news is the Reno Carson City is out of the picture for now. The most likely type of eruption we'll have will be a basaltic phreatomagmatic eruption and or a basaltic fissure cinder cone lava flow, Hawaiian or Strombolian eruption. And then the Eastern California eruption impacting Nevada, like it's done historically, is the most likely volcanic effect in the state. So my recommendation is, and I'd be happy to help you with this, is that the state hold 2 tabletop exercises, one for an eruption in Lahontan Valley Volcanic Field and one for an eruption in the Lunar Crater Volcanic Field. You get your local state subject matter experts, the USGS should come in and really work through the potential consequences, the emergency responses, and the emergency mitigation that can occur. These time periods are long enough that specific mitigative activities don't seem particularly warranted, or at least they're overshadowed by all the other things that need mitigative activities. But this kind of preparation, I think, is warranted. And also possibly conduct an out-of-state eruption tabletop exercise. It'd be great if California was doing an eruption exercise. You could do yours right out of here, on Nevada. But just to work with that as well. A Lassen eruption, even though it's just happened, unlikely to occur again, would be a great example. We don't know that it won't occur. Well, eruptions cluster in time, so we don't know that. And then importantly, document the results. So all these can be put into a report. And so that the people who really have to deal with the eruption, which isn't the people who went to the exercise most likely, can pull it off and spend the night reading about what they may be facing and come up with some strategies. And then ask AI assist. 1,000 thanks to the Nevada Bureau of Mines and Geology. They always have my back. The Nevada Division of Emergency Management, man, been working 38 years with you guys, and you've always been fabulous. And I love the collaboration, and I love the idea that our science, we try to do the best science we can, and I love that it gets injected so that it's available for Nevadans and professionals to use. Federal Emergency Management Agency, wish they were here. The Nevada Ingenious Project, and then a few individuals. Dr. Chris Henry, who's done a ton of work on volcanism in Nevada. Rachel Mykander, who helped make the map, which I should have brought, but didn't. Got Dr. Jim Faulds answered a lot of questions. Dr. Kathleen Rodriguez of DRI with the dating. Janelle Woodward, who's that? Anyway, thanks for helping get the grant. Donna DePolo, my Dr. Rubric of UNR. Whenever Donna and I would go out, Dr. Rodriguez and I would follow. So it's kind of fun. She'd help me do soil bits and stuff. And it'll be a while. No, that's going to be the report, 144 pages worth. And, I just have to. We're going to add some more co-authors and get this into a review process. But I think there's a lot of good information in there, as well as how to build a scenario volcano suggestions. We didn't do the mitigation sections for the counties. They got to do their own. It doesn't me give it, but we have a table in there that shows what they have to pay attention to. So, for example, Humboldt County has to think about, well, maybe not the volcanoes in Buffalo Valley, but anyway, that kind of thing. You've got volcanoes either in your county or just outside, or you have to consider Eastern California. We made a table for this. All right, any questions?
Thank you, Dr. DePolo. Do we have any questions? Seeing none, thank you. Oh, go ahead.
So, is the movie Volcano very realistic?
Very accurate. I'm amazed how accurate that movie is. No, the one that erupts in Las Vegas, we could take that one off our plate.
Good.
No volcano in Las Vegas. However, it's interesting to note that an ash from monocraters has been found in Las Vegas Valley. And so they're not out of the woods as far as a tephra fall. It'd be a bit of an unusual event, because it would take a north wind. But it has happened historically, it's happened geologically, the recent geologic past. So any part of the state can be affected. Really depends on the winds. That'll be the strategy you guys got to work on.
I guess Mammoth would also be close.
That's the same, yeah, that's sort of the same area. The
Yeah.
Mono Craters is one of the younger volcanic parts of that whole Long Valley Mammoth system.
Very fascinating. We have one,
Andrew,
yes, Andrew, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Doctor. I just want to say, first of all, glad there's Las Vegas isn't in imminent danger of volcano or volcanic activity. But I just want to thank you for that presentation. All of those presentations you've given on earthquakes over the years have been so educational, and I never had seen one on volcanic activity. So that was amazing. So thank you very much.
you're welcome. Stay strong, buddy.
Mr. Backendall.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Dr. DiPaolo. In regards to the types of eruptions, for the impacts to Carson City, we're in the middle of our hazard mitigation plan right now. So with that, those types of flows, similar to the Hawaiian type lava flows, aren't like the St. Helens polyclastic huge eruptions. So the threats and risks to that and the potential mitigations for Carson City would be what?
So we don't, fortunately, the nearest volcanic field is inactive. So we will take that one off the table. The nearest thing for Carson City is going to be an ash fall out of California. And so either the volcanoes in the Lake Tahoe area are as old as the Western Nevada volcanic field. So we don't really anticipate those to erupt. However, there is a caveat. There was we did see magmatic activity at the base of the crust. I'm trying to remember, it's like 2005, I'm not sure of the date. But it was under northern Lake Tahoe, but it did go something like, it was surprising. Magma appeared to go 4 kilometers in about 23 days, but very deep, 23 kilometers down. So even though we saw that, that doesn't really key us in. The most likely eruptions would be from the Mono Lake area or the Lassen volcanic field if it was a northern, but mostly it'd be an ash eruption.
Thank you. Yeah, after Janelle shared your report with us, we shared it with our entire executive steering committee, and that was the essence of what we got out of it as well. And mitigation being wearing protective equipment for the ash fallout for both residents and responders. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. You should have a pretty good heads up on that. And a lot of people just leave town for a while. Because it does have corrosive effects on vehicles and things like that. The more vulnerable parts are things like sewer systems that can get impacted by a lot of ash, and infrastructure can be impacted. And so you may want to turn those off. I'm not sure. Other people have thought more about mitigation. And let me emphasize that in the report, I highlight a USGS report on California that was done just a few years ago. And if you want to understand how to characterize the consequences of an eruption and think about the mitigation aspects, that report is a great one. It's highlighted somewhere in the report. But anyway, they talk about things, what you might do for a sewer system, for example, if you have an ash cloud coming. I guess in the case of Lassen, we would have known there were eruptions. A few of them made it over before that. The kids in Winnemucca would write their names in the ash on the sidewalks and things. However, for that specific May 22nd eruption, the lead time would have been maybe 2 hours. Maybe 1 hour.
Any further questions? Thank you very much, Dr. DiPaolo.
Sorry, I took so long.
No, that was fascinating. We'll go to, we'll close out agenda item 4 and go to agenda item 5, review of submitted building resilient infrastructure in communities or BRIC applications. This is for discussion only. Janelle Woodward.
Okay, Janelle Woodward for the record. I actually thought that I removed this one because it's very similar to the next one. But what I will say is that, we're not ready to evaluate any of these applications with the committee just yet because, of the current, well, let me stop there and move to the next item and then I'll
Okay,
continue on
we'll
to that.
close out agenda item 5 and go to agenda item 6, future mitigation funding for discussion only. Janelle Woodward.
Okay, so Janelle Woodward for the record again. So what FEMA did with the new administration was to take back or pull back the notice of funding opportunities for numerous of the mitigation grants and then a bunch of other grants as well, as they were making changes to those notices of funding opportunities or NOFOs to make them align with the new administration's priorities. So as of right now, we know that the federal government passed that continuing resolution. We don't have the NOFOs back yet. So there's really, we don't know anything on timing quite yet. There are all kinds of rumors out there about, you know, that they were doing reviews in the background, you know, so that they could move forward. We haven't heard anything yet. As soon as we know something, we will let everybody know. I would recommend if you have projects to go into BRIC or the flood mitigation assistance programs, to get into FEMA Go and start your applications. You all know that our applications take a lot of work and a lot of time. You're better off, you know, putting some time into it now, and then you're that far ahead when they come back to us. We do expect them to give us a time extension instead of April 18th. We don't know what that would be though. It could be a week, it could be still April 18th. We just don't know. So the further ahead you are, the better for those. I'm not really expecting any of the major information to change, but things that would be removed would be the things like climate change requirements. Also, the disadvantaged communities having to record, you know, put all of that information into your application. So past that, we don't know what they're going to do. So I would look maybe for our next meeting to have to review those applications, or we may have to schedule one a little bit sooner, depending on when the NOFOs come out for BRIC and FMA. On the other spectrum are the post-disaster grants, which is the hazard mitigation grant program post-fire. So we have about $6.5 million that we're pretty good at getting spent down. Those applications are due to FEMA the end of May. So we will be bringing those forward then to our leadership probably about a month before that, so they can review. Most of that stuff is almost done, so that'll be put in. So that was a good amount from our fires, not this past year, but the year before. So we're thankful for that. Usually when we have disaster funding at the same time as pre-disaster funding, we see more of the post-disaster funding spent fairly easily, but not so much of the pre-disaster, because everybody's putting their money into the a little bit easier process of post-disaster. So we are looking to at that $2 million set aside. I'm not expecting that to change, but we never know if some of those different requirements on the set asides will change. And I think that's probably about it. Any questions?
Bill Elliott for the record. Do we have any questions for Ms. Woodward? Seeing none, thank you, Ms. Woodward. We'll close out the agenda item number 6 and go to agenda item number 7, public comment. This is for discussion only. To provide testimony during this period of public comment via telephone, please call at any time after 9:30 a.m. on the day of the meeting by dialing 669-219-2599. When prompted to provide the meeting ID, please enter 202-331-8963 and then press pound. When prompted for a participant ID, please press pound. When asked to provide public comment, please press *6 to unmute your phone and *6 again when your comments are complete. Do we have any comments in Carson City? Hearing none. Do we have any comments from our online? Hearing none. Any comments on the phone?
Lauren Borst for the record, no, sir.
Okay, so we don't have any public comments. We'll close out agenda item number 7 and go to agenda item number 8, adjournment. Do we have
Andrew Trelease, motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Andrew. And do we have a second?
Rich Kaler, second.
We have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Can stay where they are. And we are adjourned. Thank you very much.